Hello and welcome back to the Sober Talk session of Cecil Talk All. This is me, Cecil Coker, presenting you this wonderful show, all that concerns about Africa, and for Native Africans both in the diaspora and in Africa. Listen to this wonderful independent media, Native Americans exposing the United States and the West, how corrupt they are, how they destroy the world. And it's the same United States that goes around teaching countries democracy. But I'll give my opinion, my personal opinion, at the end of the episode. So listen very carefully. I leave you. Listen.
Very powerful Democrat. What the hell did you do with the money? There you go. I love that. Just because you're on the left or you're a Democrat doesn't mean you're supposed to kiss the ass of the powerful on the left or the Democratic Party. You're supposed to challenge them to actually do the right thing.
Yeah, look, to answer your question, I'm sure that there are some views that Jon Stewart has that are a little different from mine or from yours. But it's okay to have like minor disagreements or disagreements on the edges. I think for the most part, he's right on the issues. And when it comes to anything pertaining to first responders, to military ways, to the treatment of service workers, he's just on point. So this is where he really shines, and you're about to see more of it. So this conversation was taking place at some event called the War Horse Symposium. It took place in Chicago. Let's watch more videos.
Audits and waste, fraud, and abuse are not the same thing. So let's decompose these
please
pieces
educate me on
Sure.
What
so an audit is exactly what you just described,
yes.
which is, do I know what was delivered to which place?
Right.
The ability to pass an audit or the fact that the DoD has not passed an audit is not suggestive of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is completely false right there. So
what is
now is a question of, it's suggestive that we don't have an accurate inventory that we can pull up of what we have where. That is not the same as saying we can't do that because waste, fraud, and abuse has occurred.
So in my world,
yeah,
that's waste.
No, I love that, and I chose that time code in the video to show you how defensive she is, because homegirl, 61% of the military's assets can't be accounted for.
Oh, come on.
Come on. Are you really trying to defend this disaster?
I'll go 10,000 times farther than Jon Stewart. No, I think you guys are robbing us blind, okay? I think you can't account for 61% of it because you're giving it to defense contractors in a completely unaccountable way. They're stuffing it into their pockets, and then later you will get hired by those same defense contractors. I think you're corrupt. I think this defense secretary is corrupt. I think the defense secretaries and all the generals that immediately join these defense contractors, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, right wing or left wing, I think they're all corrupt. And I think that they're stealing and stealing and stealing billions of dollars. And by the way, Jon Stewart's absolutely right. The facts too, like in any business, if you said in a business setting, oh, you gave me $1 billion. Well, I don't know where it is.
Right.
And then the investor or shareholders or whoever, do you think they'd be like, oh no, that's not waste, fraud, or abuse, that's totally fine? No, of course not. They'd be like, where's the goddamn money?
Right.
Where's the goddamn money? Did you put it in the Bahamas? Where the hell is it? Right? No, of course that's waste, fraud, and abuse. It's not even close. No, she's a total joke.
Where it brings up the pay and the financial conditions of service members relative to what we, pump out financially for the Defense Department every single year. Let's watch.
I'm not saying this is on you and that you caused this, but I think it's a tough argument to
I'm pretty
make
sure
that
I didn't cause it.
an $850 billion budget to an organization that can't pass an audit and tell you where that money went, like, I think most people would consider that somewhere in the realm of waste, fraud, or abuse, because they would wonder why that money isn't well accounted for. And especially when they see food insecurity on military bases, and they see—
You want to talk about that? Because that's a good, we should be talking. I mean,
well,
I'm trying to understand where you're trying to go, other than the dollars, which really bother you.
I think it doesn't really bother me. I think it's all connected.
Far and wide as possible, the United States building 750 military bases around the world. And so the USD dollarization is accelerating. That's a separate conversation from what we're having here, but it's all tied together. It's all tied together. So last week, We heard from the Bank of England. Their goal is to remove cash altogether in favor of digital currency. And in the EU, it is now illegal for you to use more than 1,000 euros to pay more than 1,000 euros in cash for anything. Think about that. Oh, you've got a landscaping job at your house and you want to pay the gardeners or whatever to do it, laying new bricks or whatever going to do. $1,000, 1,000 euros, pay them in cash. Sorry, illegal. In fact, not only just illegal, could be imprisoned for it, fined and imprisoned for it.
Right. They say it is now activity of the gray market.
Yeah, you'd be in the gray market.
You've taken yourself into an illegal place.
Yeah, basically you're going to label you a terrorist now.
And there are a lot of people out there that don't trust banks. I mean, my grandmother, who was German, she did not trust banks. She had cash in purse, buried in a lot of purses in her house when she passed away, because they don't want to trust banks. And you can't fault people for that. So because they don't trust that system, they're now going to be penalized and won't be able to, $1,000 is quite a bit for everyday things, but they do make major purchases sometimes.
Yeah, sure. And why is it up to the government to tell me what is a big purchase or not? Right? Like, who's to set the threshold? Yeah, most purchases are going to be an ice cream cone for $5 or $4 for the kids, getting a couple ice cream cones at the beach or something like that, right? Most purchases with cash is not going to be $1,000, but some of them will be. And shouldn't I be allowed to do that if I want to? Have a few trees removed from the backyard or something, and it's going to cost, and I want to pay them that way? I should be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to tell me how I spend my money, you fascists. And they're going to use fear of terror attacks as the mechanism to control you. That those people that would be using cash in this way are terrorists.
Oh, this will sure stop them.
So in Europe now, if you use cash beyond 1,000 euros, you'll be fined or put in jail. Listen to Christine Lagarde, head of the ECB, the European Central Bank, explain how this will work to protect you against terrorism. Now, this video has gone a bit viral, but the reason it's gone viral is because this was a prank phone call. But the beauty of this prank phone call is that it was a prank, but asking legitimate questions that elicited straight up answers right out of her mouth about exactly how they will control you. Listen to the back and forth exchange on this live stream where she answers these questions. Watch.
There are many protests in Europe against the electronic euro. What is the reason?
It's the beauty of Europe. It has different positions. If you ask in Northern Europe, for instance, in the Netherlands, they're quite happy to see the e-euro coming. If you ask a young German man, he'll say, yeah, fine. As I said, I don't want Meta, Google, or Amazon to suddenly come up with a currency that would take over the sovereignty of Europe. I don't want a foreign currency to become the currency of trading within Europe. So we have to be ready.
No, the problem is they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to.
Yeah, but you know what? Now we have in Europe this threshold above 1,000 euros. You cannot pay cash. If you do, you are on the gray market. You take your risk. You get caught. You are fined or you go in jail. But, the digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control. You're right. You're completely right. We are considering whether for very small amounts, anything that is around 300, 400 euros, we could have a mechanism where there is zero control. But that could be dangerous. The terrorist attacks on France back 10 years ago were entirely financed by those very small anonymous credit cards that you can recharge in total anonymity.
So 1,000 euros, you'll be penalized. Those are the controls we're putting in place. And you see when she shoots down the idea of control. She's like, yeah, but this control is good because otherwise the terrorists win.
Week's air raid. And this is how it ended. Concrete structures reduced to rubble, buildings on fire and panic on the streets. These pictures are from Uman in central Ukraine. An apartment block was struck here. Until this morning, the building was on fire. There were emergency crews at the site. They spent hours looking through the rubble.
One part of the apartment block is completely destroyed. Preliminary info is that 109 people lived in that part. 27 out of 46 flats are completely destroyed. We organized operations as fast as possible to rescue the people that are alive and trapped under the rubble. Canine units are also working on the site.
These sites were common at the beginning of the war, but towards the end of last year, things eased a bit. Russia stopped these large-scale attacks, presumably because it ran out of missiles. But last night, Russia resumed the missile attacks. Russian forces launched a night raid. Missiles rained on some of the largest cities in Ukraine. Multiple deaths are being reported, including that of a 2-year-old child. These civilians were sleeping when the missiles hit their homes. And Kiev too was rocked by explosions. This is Russia's biggest attack in nearly 2 months. Less than 24 hours before the attack, the southern city of Mykolaiv was targeted. This is a city in Ukraine, and here 2 civilian buildings were struck. Reports say Russia fired 4 cruise missiles from the Black Sea. At least 1 person is said to have died. Now the question is, why has Russia intensified the attacks? Is it trying to send a message to Kiev? A warning, perhaps? And I'll tell you why I say this. Ukraine has been planning a counter-offensive. It wants to retake some of its lost territories. Is that why Russia is striking Ukraine? To deter the Ukrainian forces. It's been at it for a while now, in fact. Moscow hasn't spelled out its motives yet, but there's no doubt that it is striking hard. And its weapon of choice are missiles. So Russia has been on the offensive, and some experts link it to the leaked US intelligence report. We're barely 2 days away from May. Is Russia trying to exhaust Ukraine's stockpile then? Also, how serious are these shortages? It's hard to make an assessment independently, but earlier this month, another report raised red flags. Ukraine wanted urgent shipments of surface-to-air missiles. It feared that Russia might launch widespread bombing attacks. Now, the Russians are pounding Ukrainian targets, and Kiev has made fresh demands from allies. Zelensky, in fact, issued a statement, and I'm quoting from what he said. Russian evil can be stopped by weapons, and it can be stopped by sanctions. Global sanctions must be enhanced. This is what Zelensky wants. Meanwhile, Ukraine's counteroffensive could begin soon. NATO says it has delivered a vast amount of weapons to Kiev.
Overall, through the contact group led by the United States, NATO allies and partners have provided unprecedented support to Ukraine. More than 98% of the combat vehicles promised to Ukraine have already been delivered. That means over 1,550 armored vehicles, 230 tanks and other equipment, including vast amounts of ammunition.
This week, Xi Jinping spoke to Zelensky to start some sort of peace dialogue. But with the way the fighting is intensifying, the peace plan may already be in pieces.
I recall that Barack Obama back in 2010 said that the Russian economy is torn to pieces. Well, I think they do have this desire, and they're really stubborn, regardless of which administration is in power. You know, we by now are deeply convinced that we need to rely on ourselves and those who are ready to enter into talks. As for those who lie, for those who try to cheat on others, trying to get some illegitimate advantage, we'll not rely on such powers. There are foreign countries, who quit Russia and then are trying to go back. Well, the Russian government commented on such situation. We're not really sure that we need to quickly allow these companies to go back. You know, we need to give our own companies a chance, and we need to leverage the material goods that we've been blessed with by God, and not through virtual services and through the artificial prevalence of the US dollar. And the de-dollarization launched by the US, and it's been really an alarm for local political scientists here in the US. That's true. The share of the US dollar in global transactions went from 55% to 47% over the past year. 8 percentage points a year, well, that's quite a lot. And, bilateral transactions in currencies other than dollar switch to digital currencies, well, that's an inevitable. What's going to happen with the IMF, with the World Bank? Well, that's a big question mark. And this process has been launched, this process is ongoing. The US proved that they lied. Nixon abolished the gold standard, and they said, the US dollar is not ours. It's the global currency. It's going to provide for the uninterrupted functioning, smooth functioning of all the mechanisms of the world economy. That's what they used to say. And now they proved that, they can. It was all a lie, and they backpedaled on all of those pillars that they promoted as the backbone of the world economy. That's sound competition, the sacred nature of private property, no unilateral protectionist measures. So they, backpedaled on those values overnight. The world took it for granted, but they said, no, I'm sorry. So globalization doesn't have any prospects in the way we saw it. We are seeing a fragmentation and regionalization. And we can feel that, and we are part of this process as part of the Eurasian Economic Union and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And as part of BRICS, where President Lula, who we recall today, is interested in preparing for the next summit, which is going to take place in the summer, preparing some report on how not to depend
Hear this, African diasporas and African authorities. This is the United States of America that can give account of $850 billion military budget and Defense Department for 2022. Is this the United States you want to copy from? Like spreading democracy in Africa, talking about corruption? This next question is for the European Union or the European EU. Is it possible that, this year, 2023, it will be illegal for anyone or